Welcome back to another very uneventful week in global freight. Judah, I have a good start for you here. What is the White House's favorite craft beer? An IEPA. Hey
There it
yo!
is.
Oh my God, it can only go up
How
from
long were you
here.
sitting on that one?
Oh man, it's taken me a couple of days. Let's get into the meat. I mean, you have this great write-up about this. Maybe we'll drop the link in the show notes below. SCOTUS struck down. Trump responded with Section 122 for a 10% global tariff. Like where, or maybe 15%. Where do things stand right now?
Right. So the Supreme Court decision has been a long time in the making, has been anticipated for months. It came out on Friday, and then quickly on Friday as well, the White House issued an executive order which uses Section 122, which is a balance of payments targeted part of the trade law, to apply a 10% global tariff instead. And then very quickly afterwards, the next day, Trump said that it would be increased to 15%. The executive order says 10%. It went into effect February 24th. So it is 10%. There apparently the White House is working on 15%, but it's not there yet. And this expires. It's only good for 150 days. That's law, how the law is constructed. So it expires in late July. It doesn't touch de minimis, even though EPA was used to suspend de minimis. So for now, de minimis remains suspended. It also keeps sectoral tariffs, Section 232, in place. So like tariffs on vehicles and auto parts and steel and iron, those are still in place. It doesn't touch Section 301, which are country-specific tariffs, which have really only been used for China and from the last Trump administration, not from the current one. But it also maintains a long list of exemptions. So the administration has been exempting a bunch of different types of goods along the way over the past year, and those remain in place. The last piece is that Trump and other officials have said for a long time, and they said this week as well, that they're going to restore the tariffs they had in place by other means. They're doing it temporarily now with 122. They're going to do it for everything else using like 232 or 301 as we go ahead. And there are already signs that those are going into place, but those take time. Those require requests from the president. They require investigations by federal agencies, recommendations, and then the president is empowered to enact tariffs. So it's very possible that those tariffs can be restored before or by the July deadline, but it's going to take time.
And this is, I mean, this just reminds me again, like the whiplash here, right? For importers, it's just like you can't really plan around this, and we'll talk about this soon. Like, there's just like so much uncertainty that continues to linger. How does the 15% compare to IEPA levels?
So more or less, if you look at the different trade deals, they are all more or less within 15%. So like China was 20, so that goes down to 15%, but China is still subject to those three. Like effectively it goes down from like 47 to 42 or to 45. There are different ways of calculating it. Vietnam also was 20%, so now it goes down to 15%. UK was at 15%, EU is at 15%, but not all of their goods were at that level. So more or less it's within that range. The outlier kind of is Brazil, which was at 40%. So now that would go down to 15%. So it's kind of like flattening the landscape, but there's also pluses and minuses for different countries.
Do you anticipate there's a lot of the tariffs were used to negotiate a lot of concessions from other countries? Do you anticipate those countries reverting on those concessions, or is this just like who
Yeah,
knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's another who knows. It's a big question. So first of all, the administration is saying that they are going to honor their terms, their sides of these trade deals, and their trade deals negotiated with a bunch of different countries, most of the major trading partners over the last year. And responses from other countries are, there's a range. Some are saying we are going to honor the deals as well. Others are saying we're going to wait and see. So the EU, for example, as we said, 15% is what they had agreed to, but now it's kind of blanket and they had different, it wasn't that straightforward. There are different types of goods that were exempted or had lower, and they are objecting to this as kind of a breach of that deal. And there was supposed to be a ratification of that trade agreement in the European Parliament. And that's been put on hold until there's clarity. There's also been steps like that taken by India. So it does kind of complicate things. Trump has said the US is honoring it. If other countries do not, then he says he's on social media that he would retaliate. It's not clear how he would do so, but that's kind of like the biggest change, right? We said that the tariff levels, like the overall effective tariff level for the US, seems to have fallen by 2 percentage points. So not the biggest deal, as we said, in the country. The biggest thing that's really changed is that the Trump's threats throughout the year, and they've come from all over. Some of them have been on trade issues, other have not, like what we just saw a few weeks ago with Greenland. Those have been based on his ability to introduce binding tariffs using.
Interesting.
So the fact that IEEPA is now not a tool in the toolbox means that a lot of that volatility, a lot of that the drama that could be stirred up, at a moment's notice via social media, a lot of these never even became executive orders. That's taken away. So it's not to say that the administration can't apply tariffs at these levels again, or for other reasons on other countries, on specific countries or goods again, they can, but it's going to be a much kind of slower, lower velocity, right? Because you
Got
don't
it.
have this tool where you can announce it and it's the law the next day.
It's like not a
That's
weekend.
probably going to
I
be
mean,
what it
I
is.
guess like that's a silver lining there, right? Like no weekend tariff implementations going forward.
Yeah, I don't know if that increases the likelihood of, front loading or decreases. Like if there's an investigation going on and it's going to be done in 3 months and that it's likely going to increase tariffs, but you'd have to have those indications. But if you did, then we could see those types of, disruptions
Fascinating.
again, or at least changes in when the usual freight year.
Of course, this is all happening on the backdrop of Lunar New Year, right? So things are a little bit slow already. Lunar New Year kicked off last week, now kind of nearing an end. What does this like mean for freight in general, right? Like taking the Lunar New Year together with we talked a little bit about front loading just now, but what's the big picture and where do like the rates pop in here?
So the big question, like you said, is front loading, right? So as we said, maybe the swings haven't been so dramatic unless you are a U.S. importer from Brazil, importing goods from Brazil. It's not that dramatic, but a reduction of 5 percentage points in cost for someone importing from Vietnam or China, that might entice some shippers to say, that's lower cost now. I expect that it's going to go up before July. I'm going to increase my ordering now. On the other hand, we said there's this long list of exemptions. There are reports of the administration considering other types of exemptions. There have been Republicans who have signed bills that kind of challenge the Trump tariffs. We know the administration is under cost of living pressures politically. And if they were to increase tariffs or restore tariffs in July, that's only a few months before midterm elections. So there may be some shippers who, in addition to the fact that it's not the biggest, cost savings, may wait and see and think maybe that tariffs will swing in their favor as we move forward. So that's possibly an argument against front loading. But either way, we'd have to wait and see because, as you said, we're in the Lunar New Year period now. The official week-long holiday just ended. There's usually about a week until manufacturing really picks up as workers return to restart manufacturing. So we'll have to wait and see. So right now, ocean container rates for the Trans-Pacific, for Asia, Europe, they've really been kind of flat throughout the week, lower than they were from the highs in the pre-Lunar New Year lead up. But we'll see what happens really starting next week, whether rates increase or not. Even if they do for the Trans-Pacific, that doesn't necessarily mean front loading because it could just be kind of there's often a bump right after Lunar New Year because of backlogs that were created and shipments that hadn't come out. So on that front, we'll have to wait and see. And really kind of the same thing for air. I don't think we're going to see a huge rush front loading either. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. I would say, all in all, I'd expect that we'll see stronger volumes than maybe we otherwise would have in the coming months. Maybe a little bit earlier start to peak season than we otherwise would have. But I don't think we'll see the really strong front loading like we saw last year.
And then, I think the last thing, there's a lot of people that have paid through their nose on tariffs, especially, businesses in the United States. I see that FedEx is now suing the US government for refunds. Unclear if those will be passed back on to customers or not. Interesting question there. What does this mean in general for importers that are seeking refunds? Is that even in the cards?
Yeah, I mean, that's the other big question. So the Supreme Court did not rule on refunds. That's going to be decided by lower courts. Chances are that they will rule that the government will be required to pay refunds. What that process will be like, who's going to be eligible, those are questions that need to be answered. And it seems it's not going to be straightforward. It seems like possibly not everyone's going to be eligible, and then it's going to be a long process. It's not going to be simple and it's not going to be quick, much to many shippers' chagrin. So it's unfortunately a big question. Will consumers see those refunds if the importers now are able to recoup those funds? I'd assume not. I don't know the mechanism by which that would even happen. But it seems at least importers should be due some sort of refunds. But it seems all indications are it's not going to be quick and it's not going to be simple.
Awesome. I mean, I think honestly, for me, the best part so far of tariffs in general has been you being able to use the word chagrin so smoothly within this.
I'd use
So
chagrin. I'd find a way to use it.
stepping away from the trade wars for a second, a lot else going on in the world. Anything else impacting global trade right now?
Yeah, what about actual freight, you mean? Yeah, so there was a massive blizzard or cyclone bomb in the Northeast US, which is the second big storm in just the last few weeks. And so that has really disrupted logistics operations there. So it shut down everything, starting Sunday into Monday, ports, roads, airports, starting Tuesday-ish. Airports have started to reopen. Ports are clearing out snow and restarting operations too, but that's going to cause some congestion delays there. There's been bad weather in North Europe as well, but since we're kind of in that slower Lunar New Year period, I don't think it's being felt too much by shippers, but certainly not going to be helping. And the other drama is that we have this ongoing situation in the Panama Canal. So Hutchinson Ports, which is a Hong Kong-based country, was kind of forced to enter a sale under pressure from the U.S. that President Trump did not want a Chinese presence at either end of the Panama Canal. That deal fell through. The Panama Supreme Court ruled that in any way Hutchinson is not allowed to operate those ports. And just this week, the Panama Canal authorities actually took over those ports, and they're going to be handed off in the interim to Maersk and MSC to operate until it's actually sold. But it's an ongoing, pretty dramatic situation there as well.
Well, thanks so much, Judah, for this. For those of you listening in, we'll keep you updated on how this evolved. Again, we'll share the link for the longer write up that Judah shared earlier this week about the ruling. Thanks so much, Judah. See you next week.